This is Gesher, the podcast that's bridging the gap between the Jewish and evangelical Christian communities with conversations that matter. Here's your host, Ty Perry, with the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gesher, the podcast that's bridging the gap between the Jewish and evangelical Christian communities with those good conversations. I'm your host, Ty Perry, Director of Field Ministries at the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry, and I'm delighted to have you listening today. But I'm also delighted to have sitting across from me my friend, for the second time on the podcast, the founder and Executive Director of Jewish Frontline, my friend Shlomi Bennett. Shlomi, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
So, listeners, if you didn't listen to our first episode, let me tell you a little bit about Shlomi. Shlomi is a Jewish community organizer and the founder of Jewish Frontline, which is a grassroots movement, and I'm quoting here, centered on unapologetic Jewish visibility and continuity. His work challenges erasure while helping build confident, future-facing Jewish communities. And we talked a little bit about that at the beginning of the last episode, so I urge you to go back. And I'm grateful that we're here because Shlomi and I, we don't agree on a lot. We agree on many things, but there's some very significant things with which we disagree with one another. And yet the whole purpose of Gesher is to build bridges with conversation. And I know we're going to do that again today. So the episode that we recorded last time was released on January 16th. It was called The Elephant in the Room, Why We Disagree About Jesus of Nazareth. So I encourage you to go to listen to that. Today our topic, it's a minor thing, nothing big, Shlomi, just evangelism, Right. No, it's a big deal. So we're talking about evangelism, why Christians do and Jews don't. I am excited about this because I want to know more about the Jewish view, not only of Christian evangelism, but the Jewish view of sharing your faith with others. So I'm looking forward to that. We have to admit that the term evangelism is something of a Rorschach test. So when a Bible-believing Christian, as we often call ourselves, evangelical Christians, when they hear the term evangelism, when I hear the term evangelism, I think of it pretty positively. It can be scary, from a Christian perspective, like telling other people about what you believe, that's scary, but it's viewed in a positive thing. It's an act of obedience to Jesus. But on the other hand, Jewish people hear it, and what do they think, Shlomi?
Missionary work,
Okay.
right? Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
And when you say missionary work, you don't say that with a positive.
Yeah, I know, right?
You should explain that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I'm trying to find on-air words for this. Jews definitely have. Jewish people have a real aversion to missionary work. I mean, that's just historically become a form of survival. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that's just ingrained intergenerationally, just to resist it or to not engage at all. And that has been, and I think that has led to a pretty significant misconception of evangelism and among the Jewish community. And you could go into more explaining the difference between evangelism and proselytizing.
Yeah,
and
maybe we should talk about that.
Yeah.
So the terms are usually used interchangeably, and we can understand proselytizing versus evangelizing. I honestly, until I became more involved in the pro-Israel Jewish community, I had never heard the term proselytizing. Like that wasn't even something I had imagined, like just maybe I was sheltered. I had never heard that.
Yeah.
And then when I heard it from the Jewish community, I was like, oh, I know what you're talking about. And I could definitely hear this is a negative in the Jewish world.
Yeah.
And let's just define this. So proselytizing is to seek to convert someone from one religion, belief system, or ideology to another, often with an emphasis on changing a person's existing allegiance. Often it involves persuasion, sometimes pressure. Whereas evangelism, it comes from the Greek word evangelion, which means to proclaim or to announce the good news of the gospel, that the gospel means good news, and inviting others to respond. Now, someone might be hearing this and saying, hey, isn't that the same thing? And I think, and we can get into this in a moment, but I would say there's a significant distinction, and I want to hear your thoughts too, Shlomi, that evangelism, from a Christian perspective, evangelism is a loving, respectful invitation to someone, kind of explaining, this is what I believe, and hey, because I believe this, I would love for you to believe it too. It's an invitation to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and it's not uniquely to Jewish people, it's to all people. Whereas proselytizing often carries this negative connotation of kind of an aggressive, coercive end or means to a similar end.
Right.
I don't know. What do you think about that? What's your perspective?
I definitely agree with the difference in those definitions. Generally, the Jewish perspective is that they're all one and the same. So we don't typically engage, and I mean, I'm coming from an Orthodox background. So when I generalize things, assume that I'm kind of speaking from an Orthodox perspective.
Yeah.
So, engaging with missionaries, whether it's evangelism, proselytizing, we shut the door. We say no, thank you. Now, evangelism, I could get down with that. I can. We're doing it right now. We're sitting down. We're having a conversation. We're engaging in our beliefs. It's your obligation to share that with me, and it's my obligation to say the Jews don't need it, but we respect it. We respect each other, and we continue having conversations, and we continue being friends and building our relationships and doing what we're supposed to be doing. You evangelizing and me saying no, thank you. That's
yeah. Well, and this is also another way of putting that. I am very involved in the Jewish community, and it's, surprise, surprise, Jesus is the elephant in the room when a Christian and a Jewish person sit down. And so what I often tell people, because they ask, leaders in the Jewish community, are you trying to convert us? And I say, first of all, I don't have any power to convert anyone. That idea of changing someone, I don't have that power. I represent Jesus. I will tell you what I believe. But I always say this, let's say that I am 100% sure that Shlomi Bennett is never going to believe in Jesus. It doesn't change my friendship at all. It doesn't change my relationship at all, because it comes from a place of love, not a, hey, Shlomi, I'm going to try to get you. So it's kind of an approach that is vastly different there.
So I know we didn't really talk about this earlier, but I'm just remembering it now. Now, historically, even between the Jewish community and the evangelical community here in Michigan, there have been tensions as far as concerns for, trying to convert and evangelize the Jewish community. I've been referenced to articles where even out of the Friends of Israel Ministries, we've talked about it briefly, where one of the pastors had mentioned, the Jewish community in West Bloomfield or somewhere is ripe for conversion or something like that, and things like that. Even it was internal dialogue. It was talking to a community, and that's not necessarily always the outward. It doesn't always reflect the same what we say to between our community members and what the actual reality of coexistence is. Sure. It doesn't always align, but things like that definitely set the Jewish community on edge, put up our guards, and say, like, how are we supposed to engage with this authentically when we're constantly looking over our shoulders and have to worry that, well, do they really mean it? Are they really just trying to share what they think is good? Or are they really hopefully constantly trying to push us towards converting and accepting Jesus? which ultimately, like, like I said, we could engage. I could engage with the New Testament and could look through it, but I do have to apply a Jewish lens to it and a framework and say, this is why it doesn't work to my belief system and why it never will. And if I am steadfast and understanding in what I believe, then I don't have to worry about engaging with you, because we're just working on two different systems. And it's not about, oh, can you convince me or whatever. We're comparing apples to oranges at this point. So I don't see any dangers in engaging with evangelism. Proselytizing is, one step below jihad.
Potent words from Shlomi. No,
yeah.
And I think if I can, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Shlomi, but I think part of, you could tell me many reasons, but I think part of why evangelism, or let's just say a Christian sharing the gospel with a Jewish person, is let's be kind and say challenging for Jewish people, or very offensive, is there's a difference for in the Christian theology, Christian world, when I'm a Gentile who years ago became a Christian. I wasn't born a Christian. It's a Jesus called it being born again. Like, you can't be born a Christian. Being Jewish is you're a people, but there's also a religion with that,
right?
And so when someone is talking, let's say someone comes up to you and says, "Shlomi, you need to believe in Jesus," you don't view that, I'm assuming, just as hey, you're wrong about Judaism. It's also an affront in your mind to your identity as a people, as a member of a people as well. Would I be right in saying that?
So you're saying it's not only an attack on my religious beliefs, but also an attack on my identity as part of a people.
Right, because if you, let's just hypothetically you became, in your view, if you became a believer in Jesus, you've lost your Jewish identity.
No.
You don't believe that?
No.
Okay, that's good for me to hear, because that's not what I've heard from other people. So I'm glad. Okay.
No, so that's the thing. That's the unique thing about Judaism. It's like a Jew, like you said, you're born Jewish. Obviously there are converts, but the whole system and laws around converts, according to Judaism, the idea is for them to eventually, that their offspring are going to be a part of the people. So and if you look at the text, from the Torah describing a convert, it never says, "Oh, you converted and now you are a Jew." They are forever a convert and considered a convert, and it's a separate category ultimately from, the Jewish people. But the laws surrounding that requires us to treat them in higher regard than we would treat, others, and with absolute kindness, put them first, and absolutely bring them in and hold them close and hold them dearly. So that way their children are integrated into society. It's all an integration system, so that way 2-3 generations from now, that's just another Jewish family,
But that's a Gentile converting to Judaism. Right. What I'm saying is, where evangelism, or this idea of a Jewish believer in Jesus would be maybe offensive or an affront, is because you would lose not only the religion, but you're also you're not considered Jewish anymore.
So what I was getting at saying was, while we do have converts within the religion, a born Jewish person cannot ever stop being Jewish.
Okay.
It's literally in their DNA at this point. Like if I haven't done my DNA test. I want to, but my sister's done it, and I have on
Are
good,
you Jewish, Shlomi?
Yeah. I have on good standing that our DNAs have similarities. So, her DNA test came back as like 96.8 Ashkenazic Jew or something, or 98.6% Ashkenazi Jew. And then, if you click into the little disclaimers on it, it explains on how the Ashkenazic Jews trace back to the Levant. And, so for all you Kaiser Jew people listening.
A lot of people don't know. Let me just give a note. So this is a big thing right now with the online right, and it's absolute garbage that Ashkenazi Jews, which are Ashkenaz is basically Germany, that the Jews of Germany and Europe are not actually Jews, that there was a people, the Khazars from, I think, Turkey centuries ago. They en masse converted to Judaism, and there you have these quote-unquote fake Jews. It's complete bunk because they've done DNA samples like you're talking about that connect the Sephardim, the Spanish, relatively Spanish Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, the Mizrahi, all to common ancestors in the Middle East.
Right.
So that's what you're referencing.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, so, no matter what religion, so even if a Jew, let's say a Jew in Israel, he goes to the army, he's stressed out, he has to go find himself, he goes to India, he discovers Buddhism. He's a Buddhist Jew. If it were the same thing, with a Jewish woman marries a Muslim, their kids, ironically, are Muslim Jews by both.
It'd be an interesting household, but there are people like that.
One of my good friends. Yeah. Rest in peace. Yeah, but his mom's Jewish, his dad's Muslim, and it was definitely an interesting house.
And I have many friends who they don't usually use the term Jewish Christian, more they'd say like a Jewish believer in Jesus, but they still identify strongly as
right,
Jews.
Exactly, right. So very often, right. So obviously, and then you do have historically, and I'm sure modern times now too, Jews who then let go of their Jewish identity, convert to Christianity, practice Christianity, beyond the Jews for Jesus movement or Messianic Jews. They're still Jewish at their core. They, the day that they do teshuvah, like we'll talk about later, they're coming back, they're brought back into the fold.
Okay.
So there isn't any
teshuvah. You mean
teshuvah
repentance?
Is repentance.
Yep.
Yeah. That's you can't shake it.
Yeah.
And that, and that's also, it kind of leads us into why I'm a Zionist.
And I can't wait for that conversation. It's going to be good. Can we, I want to go back just a little bit to, let me first kind of set the stage for the Christian perspective on evangelism. So let's talk about the Christian theology behind it. Where does this come from? So it really has its roots in what we call the Great Commission. Those words aren't found in Scripture in the New Testament, but it's this at the very end of Jesus' earthly ministry. In Matthew 28, he says, let me read Matthew 28, verses 16 through 20. But the 11 disciples proceeded to Galilee, to the mountain which Jesus had designated. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some were doubtful. And Jesus came up and spoke to them, saying, All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So we call this in the Christian world the Great Commission, where it's Jesus saying, go make disciples. So this isn't the idea of go change people's ethnicities and identities. It is go proclaim to them the gospel, teach them what I've said, and make disciples, make followers. And so that's where this comes from. And this is where we get into the idea of salvation, that it's a spiritual salvation from the power and the penalty of sin, which the penalty would be the wrath of God in hell. The only requirement for that is for a person to put their faith in Jesus as we would say as the Messiah, the Son of God. And what we see then is, where does this come from? Well, Jesus says to do this, but then it comes from seeing the world as they need this because we found it and we want the world to experience a great thing just as we have. And so what motivates it is obedience to what Jesus said. But from a Christian perspective, I mean, I can't speak for every evangelic out there, but for myself, I can say this, this summer, my neighbor across the street, he's the grandson of a Nazi. And we were talking actually in this very room, and I shared what I believe with him.
Yeah.
I shared the gospel with him. Now, it's his decision whether he believes in that or not. But I did that out of a love for him, not I need I got to get my quota of converts this week. Like that's not even on even in my thought.
Right.
But it comes out of a place of love. And I think of Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller. So there's this famous incident that he recorded. I think he tweeted about it a few years ago, where Gillette is this is a whole nother topic, Jewish and an atheist. He told the story of one day, I think it was after one of his shows in Vegas, this Christian came up to him and said, I know you are an atheist, but I want you to have this. And he gave him a Bible. And Penn Jillette said, I wanted to write it down so I have it right. He says how he respected that guy, even though he disagreed with him. He said this, quote, how much do you have to hate somebody to believe that everlasting life is possible and not tell them? And so that's where we come from, is not trying to ruin somebody's day, but trying to love them that way. And so like from a Jewish perspective, and I'll stop here just a minute, but from the context, I should say, of like sharing what we believe with Jewish people, it comes out of whether Jewish people would feel this or not, it comes out of a place of respect and a love for them. From my perspective, at least not telling a Jewish person what I believe is actually the height of anti-Semitism, ironically, because it would be, okay, I believe that Jesus is the Messiah, that it's only in him that a person can be saved from their sin and from the penalty of sin, of hell. And I'm going to tell everybody, but not the Jewish people. So from our perspective, that would be like the height of hatred.
Right.
So anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell where at least I'm coming from. I can't speak for everybody. But that's kind of where I'm coming from.
So I think, that that's innocent enough. But I think the real hope of the Jewish community would be for the evangelical community to realize that the Jewish covenant is continuous. It's never stopped. We don't have Christianity as a completion to Judaism or to our covenant or a renewal of a new covenant. And so while we were not going to tell you not to evangelize other nations or to, spread the gospel, it does ultimately become offensive to the Jewish community because it's like we're the OGs in this, where this is our deal, where we're locked into an original covenant with God, and in fact, you're locked into a covenant with God that predates our covenant with God because of the Noahide laws, which ultimately becomes the Jewish alternative to evangelism, because that's what we were charged to spread to everyone else was actually the 7 Noahide laws, which are derived from Genesis 2:16 through 2:17, and then 9:4 through 6, and then it's later articulated in Talmud and more codified into a 7-part system, but it's all derived from Genesis.
Can I just ask you a couple questions?
Yeah.
For clarification. So when you say covenant, I obviously agree you're in covenant with God, the Jewish people. What covenant are you referring to? Are you referring to the covenant made with Abraham, or the covenant made at Sinai with Moses? Like what covenant is being referred to there when you say that?
I guess all of the
All you put them all together.
It's all one covenant. And God is there's a covenant with Abraham, which, is unbreakable. He made promises to Abraham about his children.
Right.
We're in a covenant with God from Sinai, which again, it's never ending. I was just listening to a class on this week's Torah portion, which is Jethro, and in that portion, in that portion, they're receiving the 10 Commandments, and it talks about the commandment of adultery, of not worshiping idols, and I should have tagged this, but in the original text, in Hebrew, I don't know how it has in any later versions of the Bible, but it says that you shouldn't have any idols, you shouldn't serve any idols, and you shouldn't make them. And I'm paraphrasing, I might say it in a different order. And it talks about, and then a commentator, the Baal HaTurim, goes into why it uses this triple language, and it says for two reasons. A, because and it discusses the language around that as well, differentiating between the two uses of God's name. Talks about why is it different in this spot than other different spots? And I'm sorry, I can't give a better quoted.
No, it's okay.
Give over of this. But they're saying, God's pretty merciful, except for when it comes to idolatry. He's very serious about this. And then, I really should pull it up. But it goes on to say that like how we shouldn't have them, we shouldn't make them, we shouldn't worship them. And how long does this go on for? How long are you supposed to keep this promise? Until the day I die, I'm pretty sure. And that's what, for as long as I exist. And
God is saying that?
And that's God saying it, which is for, all eternity. Now, if this is part of the covenant of Sinai, I mean, that's pretty clear that it doesn't get disrupted by post, by later actions or assumptions or different revelations. This is binding for all eternity. Just this one commandment. All the more so the rest of the covenant is also was received at Sinai is also for all eternity. It's perpetual. It's never ending.
See, and I appreciate you saying that. So my understanding of it is I 100% agree. Like what I'm going to say is not that, well, let me just say what I'm going to say. Yeah. The Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 12, Genesis 13, Genesis 15, Genesis 17, it's repeated all throughout the scripture. That is, I always view that as it's the adoption of Abraham's family through Isaac and Jacob, the Jewish people, as God's forever people. Like there is nothing that the Jewish people could do to make God disown them. Mm-hmm. And I think if we're both honest, you read the scriptures, the Israelites gave him a lot of reason, and yet God's always faithful to your people.
Right.
Which I affirm 1,000%. Like I shout it from the housetops. When it comes to the Mosaic covenant, in English we usually call it the law. Mm-hmm. The text seems to indicate though that is one covenant that is conditional, because whereas the Abrahamic covenant, God makes all the promises. In fact, Abraham in Genesis 15, he's asleep on the ground. He's not even contributing anything to the covenant. Whereas at the Mosaic covenant, beginning there in Exodus, but it really goes throughout, to the end of the Torah, it is God says, I will do this if you will do this. And then when Israel, in the nation of Israel, repeatedly, he's always calling them through the prophets, like saying, you have disobeyed this covenant. And so by the time you get to Jeremiah, and by the time you get to Ezekiel, so the Babylonian exile period, he says, I'm just going to read from Jeremiah 31. He says, behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, although I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. And then he goes on to say that this new covenant is going to be different in that it won't just be written on tablets of stone. It'll be written on the hearts of the Jewish people, and they will have the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit within them. So I've always viewed the Mosaic covenant, the Sinai covenant, as a covenant that doesn't determine whether the Jewish people are in relationship with God. That was settled with the Abrahamic. That's unconditional.
Right.
But that the Mosaic could be broken, and in fact, God even says in Jeremiah, was broken, which however you want to interpret the new covenant, we can discuss that. That's a whole show.
Wouldn't that be referencing the Abraham or the Sinai covenant?
Well, he's saying
in Jeremiah,
he's saying that the one
that was broken was the Sinai covenant.
was the Sinai. So
Right,
that's what.
right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
maybe we're
okay.
in agreement. I'm saying the Abrahamic is like the foundational, never going to move. The Jewish people are always God's people.
Mm-hmm.
The Mosaic covenant is you need to obey. I'm not saying you only, Shlomi, but like
Right.
the
No,
nation of
you're
Israel
saying,
needs to obey, and God will do. He will bring blessing on them as a nation. Their disobedience will bring cursing on a nation, or on that nation, and so that Mosaic covenant is actually, the Sinai covenant is actually breakable, which is why he says you broke it, but I'm going to send you a new one that's not like that one. That's my understanding of the Sinai covenant. Now, I don't think that affects at all your, like the nation of Israel's being the chosen people or the apple of God's eye. But I wanted to push back a little bit on
Right.
that I think that the Sinai covenant is breakable and has been broken.
So, but that's talking about a messianic era, right?
Exactly.
So, and then that goes back to our last conversation of fulfillment for that messianic era, where you believe that those prophecies have been fulfilled in completion, or
Not all of them.
or right,
Yeah.
or enough so that we have entered a messianic era.
No, I don't
No.
believe that. So I think you and I have way more in common when it comes to the Messianic age.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, just to speak frankly, that when the Jewish leadership, the Pharisees, Sadducees of Jesus' day, when they led the nation in saying, no thanks, we don't believe you are the Messiah, Jesus,
Yeah.
that didn't mean he wasn't the Messiah. That he says, okay, then you will not see me again until you say, and you said it in Hebrew, but it's a blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, Baruch, is it Baruch Haba?
Baruch haba b'shem Hashem.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So he says, you will see me again,
Yeah.
and when will it be? When I come back to establish that era. That's where we see it.
Right. So, and then, right. But then again, we've falling back into that entire last conversation of, according to Jewish framework, we dictate who is Messiah by completion, not just by prophetic or by prophetic prediction or by wonders or miracles.
Sure.
It literally has to be, you got to check the boxes. You've got to do all of this. We can say you might possibly be the Messiah, but if you don't check these boxes or if you fall out of the line, then we can no longer assume that you are the Messiah.
Sure.
And then that's kind of basically where Jesus ends up getting disqualified under a Jewish framework. Check out the earlier episodes
Please do.
to learn more. It's super interesting. I had a great time with it.
Can
But
I ask about the second part? Because I think this will lead into it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Noahide laws. To a lot of our if there's Orthodox Jewish people listening, they probably know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Most of my Christian audience wouldn't. So the Noahide laws, even though maybe they have some basis in Genesis, it's not as if they are delineated like, here are the 7 Noahide laws in Genesis. So I think I have a list from Chabad of the 7. So I'll just read them, and then I want to know, how does that tie in with this idea of like Gentiles and relationships with eternity? So the 7 Noahide laws, and I'm just getting this from the Chabad website, correct Chabad if you want.
Yeah.
Do not profane God's oneness in any way. Do not curse your creator. Do not murder. Do not eat a limb of a still living animal. Do not steal. Harness and channel the human libido. So this is basically no sexual immorality.
Yep.
Establish courts of law and ensure justice in our world. That's 1. So those are the 7. Is that proper?
Yeah.
Proper understanding there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, right. You said not to eat the limb off a living animal, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that pretty much covers it.
So then those are incumbent upon Gentiles. And what is the result? I'll just make it very basic.
Yeah.
In the Jewish view, what is the result of me? Like I look at those and I think I've met those.
Yeah.
So like, what's the benefit for me? But what if I do break some of these, one or all, or any number? What's the consequences of not keeping them?
It's I think it's a matter of simply being righteous in God's eyes.
Okay.
If you keep the Noahide laws, then you are considered righteous among nations, and you could live in the land of Israel among the Jews. If not, then you are not, righteous, and
what happens to the unrighteous? I know I want to be fair here.
Yeah.
In Judaism, and if we just say in the Tanakh, Christian listeners in the Old Testament, we don't have a crystal clear picture of eternity or heaven, whereas in the New Testament we have more of a robust vision there, not as clear as I hope it would be, but we have it there. So, but in the Jewish view, let's say I'm an unrighteous person because I don't meet these. What's the consequence? Is there any concept of punishment, hell, wrath of God, or is it just like you don't get the gold sticker? I don't mean to make it
right. No,
crass,
of
but like
course.
what's there?
Yeah, within Judaism, we don't. So there's Gehenna, but Gehenna's more of a purgatory,
Okay.
So it's more of a cleansing process, and then anyone who follows the Noahide laws then gets a portion of the world to come.
Okay.
So that's basically your gain and consequence.
Okay.
You do it, you're in. You don't, you're not in.
But what happened? Do you know what happens? Like, I understand Gehenna is like a purgatory, but let's just say I'm just a really unrighteous guy. I don't make it through purgatory. Do I cease existing? Am I punished? Like, what happens?
So that's an interesting question. There's some, and this is completely allegorical, but there are some stories of basically when you're so bad that Gehenna doesn't want to let you in, but obviously without going through Gehenna purgatory and cleansing your soul to then be able to enter heaven, you can't get into heaven. So what happens to the soul when you can't get into hell, you can't get into heaven? You're a wandering soul. You become a dibuk. And a dibuk basically wanders the earth while being chased by angels, being flogged by angels with some, I don't know if it's spiky whips or fiery
spikes
whips
or not.
something.
It doesn't sound fun.
It's not fun, and so you'll often hear about the stories of dibuks possessing people is usually them trying to escape that the angels flogging them relentlessly. So there's actually a very interesting book in English called Dibuk by Gershom. I wish I could remember what it was. It's out of print.
Gershon Winkler?
Yes.
Okay, I just looked it up. I'm not that smart. I just found
fascinating stories. And again, this is like all allegorical based off of, Jewish legend and myth basically. But last episode I mentioned Shabtai Tzvi. Shabtai Tzvi makes a feature in the Dibbuk, and
He was a false messiah.
He was a false messiah, and eventually he converted to Islam. And so the story in the Dibbuk talks about basically what happens to Shabtai Tzvi at the end of his end of days. Actually, I think they throw in a little disclaimer where they go, "We're not sure if this is the same Shabtai Tzvi, but whatever." But basically he ends up getting murdered after committing some other obscene acts, and he becomes a wandering soul, and then he ends up possessing someone, and then it's the story of his exorcism.
So let me ask this. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna, this isn't a big question at all. I am sure you'll be able to, get through it in 5 minutes. But okay, so I look at this list, these Noahide laws. These are what are required of me. I'm going, and I say this with respect. I remember being when I was a student at UNLV in Las Vegas, and Chabad was there, and having men put on tefillin and encouraging Jewish life.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Never once did a member of Chabad come up to me and say, well, they did. They asked me, "Hey, are you Jewish?" And I said, "No, I'm not." So then they didn't have me wrap tefillin. But when they heard I was a Gentile, never once did they say, "Hey, can I tell you about the Noahide laws?" So for me, I'm meeting these. But we have whole nations, whole peoples that have never heard about the Noahide laws.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the list. They're violating them left and right.
Mm-hmm.
Back to our idea of missions or of evangelism.
Right.
Why aren't the Jewish people going to the nations and telling them, "Hey, you don't need to become Jewish, but you do need to keep these laws"?
They should be 100%. It's absolutely what you should be doing. I actually, funny you said that, because I did see a video on Facebook where I think it might have been in Australia at Bondi after the Bondi attack. Someone came up to the Chabad rabbi and told him exactly that, and he was like,
Wow.
and it went around on Jewish networks. It's like, yeah, we need to be doing this. Like, he's 100% right. I think why we haven't been doing that is because we've just been so focused on survival.
Understandable.
We've been trying to maintain our numbers, synagogues are trying to maintain their numbers. The Jewish people in general are trying to maintain their numbers. And, but we don't, historically, we're not worried about everyone else. We're just trying to, if the whole world would just leave us alone, we're not trying to convert. We're not trying to get everyone to change their life. It is discussed in later rabbinic texts that, Goyim or people of other nations following Jesus is completely acceptable. This is it's just a limitation on Jews because of our pre-existing, covenant. We're already in a full framework.
But
so
I have to ask about that, Shlomi, because if, and tell me if I'm wrong, I don't want to misrepresent your view. If you met a Jewish person who believed Jesus was the Messiah, Son of God, he is God in the flesh, that you would consider that idolatry.
Yes.
So then that is profaning God's name. So I'm breaking if I believe in Jesus, I'm breaking the first Noahide law. So how can it be good for me to be like? I would just see it as a zero-sum game. It's not good that I.
Okay, so here, let's put it this way. So if we're gonna really break it down, what would be better for you to follow the Noahide laws according to the strict Jewish framework?
Sure.
To follow the Noahide laws, or to follow Jesus and biblical Judaism as closely as you possibly can? Which one does God want you to do? The 7 Noahide laws. That's what God wants from you.
But then
God wants from me to follow the 613 commandments and, and live in that way.
And I understand that. I guess my question is then, so it is not good for me to follow Jesus. I should be following the Noahide laws. So it's not like, it just like when, and I know this isn't necessarily your position, but you said there's teaching that like, it's okay. It's good that there are Gentiles following Jesus.
Yeah.
But if that is taking me away from,
it's not bad for you. It's not taking, you're saying because if you're viewing Jesus as God incarnated, then yes, it's idolatry. But Christianity isn't only that. I mean, Christianity also introduced the idea of the God of Israel to a lot of areas of the world.
Yeah.
So in that way, it was very good because, and like Maimonides talks about in Mishnah Torah, that ultimately like we're saying, if you're supposed to be following the 7 Noahide laws, but yet we have these other Abrahamic religions existing, what's the good, and then ultimately everything's by design. Everything is done by God's reasoning for even if it's beyond our understanding, or our vision. So how could this be, especially if when Christianity and Islam had caused so much death for Jews? How could we even think, how could this even be a good thing? Of course, we only want them to be following the Noahide laws. So Maimonides says that all of these things is preparing the world for the coming of the Messiah. Everything is just getting the ducks lined up, So ultimately, yeah, if you're asking a Jew, according to Jewish framework, if you should either follow the Noahide laws or follow Christianity, then the Jew is going to tell you follow Christianity. Follow the Noahide laws. Okay. But if you're following Christianity, no Jew is going to tell you, you're doing it wrong. Just follow the 7 Noahide. Listen, like, honestly, if God only wanted me to follow 7 laws, I'd be like, hell yeah. I mean, that would make life so much simpler. All that Jewish guilt would just melt away. And, but I have 613 obligations, and that's kind of like, and I think we'll talk about that in another episode, but that kind of goes into the idea of the chosen people. Are we chosen, or it's not so much chosen. We're obligated. It's an obligation. It's a responsibility. I mean, we got 613 laws. We've got holidays every other week. We've got, fast days, and we've got,
it's not easy being Jewish.
It's not easy being Jewish, I mean, besides for all the anti-Semitism, but, so no, if the way I see it, like, yeah, if it only took me following 7 rules to be righteous in God's eyes, then why would I be seeking anything else or seeking more than that? Now, if you're a very righteous person and you love God and you just want to be close to God, I mean, and that's how you ended up with righteous sojourners in the land, because they felt that pull to the Jewish people and towards godliness and
we say Rahab.
Yeah.
I mean, she's one of those.
Exactly.
She hears what's happening, what God did for your people coming out of Egypt, and she says, "I'm going to be with the Jews. I'm going to follow them." Yeah,
exactly. And this week's Torah portion, Jethro did the same exact thing. After he came down with Moses's wife and sons, and that's the same thing. They hear the stories, they feel the greatness, and they're drawn to live with them. Jethro was not a Jew.
Right.
He was a priest.
Midian, right?
Of Midian.
Yeah, Midianite. Just so for listeners, if you're looking for what Shlomo. I'm
no
sorry.
Problem. It's the same. It's the same name.
Shlomi is talking about. It's in the English Bible, Exodus 18. It's Jethro, the priest of Midian, is Moses' father-in-law. That's who Shlomi's talking about. May I ask you, this is the final question for me. I see we're getting, we're over time already, but so you said, and I thought this was interesting, and I appreciate, you said that the Jewish people should be telling the nations, like, here's what God expects of you. Fully understand. You've got a lot going on as a people when the whole world's been trying to kill you for 2,000 years. So,
right.
I understand that. But let's just go back to that concept that they should be. In a very real sense, then, isn't that a form of evangelism? You're not it's not proselytizing, trying to forcibly convert a goy like me to be Jewish, but you are you're proclaiming the I would say a good news that, hey, this is what God expects of you. So in that sense, wouldn't that, if the Jewish community was doing that for the nations, then wouldn't that be maybe we'll say a softer version of evangelism?
We would come up with some kind of Hebrew word to apply to that group of people, and then it would be like Chabad 2.0 or something. I don't know, because Chabad is very focused on inreach, but that's that's the idea. I mean, if anyone's going to do it, it would probably be the Chabad movement. You know,
and I'm not picking on them. I just
no. I was raised in the Chabad movement. Sure. I love the Rebbe.
Sure.
No, I mean that's not a big deal.
Okay.
But I think that is 100% something that Jews in the interfaith movements and the outreach movements should really pick up more on that. Well, it's funny because, I don't want to step on your religion or on your beliefs. And if this is and I think this is where the liberalism or the progressivism of Jews tend to come into play. If this is how you connect to God, or you feel connection through Jesus, then connect to God through Jesus. No Jew should tell you not to. If, however, you're looking to connect to the God of Israel, and you want to know exactly, and you're saying, well, I'm going to go to the God's chosen people, and I'm going to ask them, how exactly am I supposed to be righteous in God's eyes? The answer is going to be follow the 7 Noahide laws. Okay. But again, things are all done through, divine design. Christianity, Islam, all of it didn't come out of, a vacuum. There's a greater reason for it. Yeah. And, if that is to spread, the knowledge of God, of Israel to every corner of the earth, or to enable them or to enable him or the Messiah to have the ingathering from all 4 corners of the earth. I mean, don't you think that an important part of being able to get all those Jews from every corner of the earth would be for everyone else to know who the God of Israel is? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because otherwise some of those Jews might not get the memo. So I think that's all, it's all part of the design. What do I know? I'm a speck within existence. So I don't know much, but it would seem to me that Christianity, Islam, for all the grievances it's causing us right now, it's got a purpose. Christianity, the crusade, it's gone through some very violent phases, but where Christianity has brought us to the evangelist movement, I mean, I think it's pretty significant. It's a pretty significant trajectory for the religion, and it's definitely setting the stage for something greater.
Well, Shlomi, I want to thank you. This has been a great conversation, another great conversation. I want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me again.
Hey everyone, you've been listening to Gesher. I hope that this has been a very interesting conversation. You probably agree with one of us or neither of us, and that's fine. But I hope it's been a stimulating conversation that you've learned. Please make sure to tune in next time. We're going to be talking again with Shlomi about another important topic. So I can't wait to have you there. Until that next time, shalom.
You've been listening to Gesher, a ministry outreach production of FOI Equip, your free resource for learning and engaging with the scriptures from a Jewish perspective. To learn more, visit foiequip.org. And for more information about Ty, visit foi.org/Perry. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Shalom.